Hey guys, I have seriously been slacking. According to my YouTube analytics, over the past 2 to 3 years, the number of male subscribers to my channel has nearly doubled, yet I have not put out a video on men's skincare. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Dr. Dray. I'm a board-certified dermatologist. And in today's video, we're breaking down a simple, no-nonsense skincare routine for men. First of all, let's highlight how men's skin is different. Men's skin is thicker, has larger and more numerous collagen bundles. The oil glands are larger, and throughout a man's life, he produces a lot more sebum, aka oil, compared to a woman, and that amount pretty much stays steady throughout his adult life, declining somewhat around the age of 40. That excess oil can lead to a condition known as seborrheic dermatitis, which we will unpack later in this video. Men also have larger blood vessels coursing through their skin because they have to nourish the terminal hairs that comprise their facial hair, which I've pointed out in other videos. Growing a hair requires a lot of energy. You need good blood flow to get it going. So this can contribute to sensitivity and redness on the face, especially in men who have a condition known as rosacea, which we'll touch on later as well. And of course, shaving creates its own host of skin issues, post-shave irritation, and ingrown hairs, for example. When it comes to aging, men tend to have more prominent forehead wrinkles. Importantly, men are a lot less likely throughout their lifetime to protect their skin from the sun to wear sunscreen consistently. As a result, men tend to get skin cancers even more commonly than women, and of course show some of the visible signs of sun damage. So let's build a simple skincare routine that takes into account some of these differences. Step number 1, I recommend everyone wash their face at least once a day, ideally at the end of the day. Cleanser helps to remove excess sebum from the surface of the skin, which if left to its own devices can oxidize, create a lot of inflammation, and drive skin problems, also contributing to overall dullness and coarse skin texture. If you're still using regular old school bar soap, you might want to rethink that. Bar soaps, although there's a lot of differences in different bar soaps out there, which we won't get into in this video, but they often tend to be harsher, namely in the nature of their pH as compared to the pH needs of the skin barrier. By raising the pH of the skin barrier from a harsh cleanser, you actually make the skin significantly more vulnerable to post-shave irritation, to transepidermal water loss, dryness, irritation, overall dull skin appearance. Generally speaking, I suggest swapping out that old school bar soap to a basic facial cleanser. Here's the thing, don't overcomplicate it. Just choose a facial cleanser that you like enough to feel comfortable using consistently. There are so many out there. For the most part, they all do the same thing. And I have a ton of videos on my channel shopping at different stores for skincare products. You can go into the Dollar Tree and get a facial cleanser for $1.25 that does exactly what you need. Now, I will say that a facial cleanser that contains an exfoliating acid like salicylic acid, glycolic acid, or lactic acid might be of particular interest to you if you struggle with ingrown hairs because it can mildly exfoliate the surface of the skin, reducing ingrown hair formation. But otherwise, just stick to a simple basic cleanser. Some people find they also benefit from washing their face first thing in the morning, although other people are like, yeah, I just splash some water on my face and that is it. It really boils down to you, your preferences, and what your skin finds that it needs. Step number 2 is going to be a moisturizer. So a lot of people worry that using moisturizer will clog their pores and make their skin oily, but this is actually a myth. As a matter of fact, consistent use of a moisturizer can help cut down on pore clogging and comedone formation. Comedones happen when the skin, the epidermis, isn't quite maturing at a reasonable rate. The cells kind of get stuck together in this dry clump within the pore, plugging it up. When the outermost layer is adequately hydrated with water, well, the enzymes that are responsible for turning over the epidermis, they can function much better. They require water to do their job. So by consistently moisturizing your skin and optimizing water content in the outermost layers of the skin, you ultimately can just help it naturally exfoliate better, keeping the skin smooth, hydrated, and just improving overall skin clarity, giving the skin a smooth, more overall radiant appearance, and reducing dull, dry skin texture. Also, ultimately can help cut down on ingrown hair formation. I especially encourage applying a moisturizer in lieu of a traditional aftershave after shaving because it really meets the needs of the skin post-shave, namely in addressing the moisture barrier. Like facial cleansers, there are so many facial moisturizer options. It really can get overwhelming, but honestly, at the end of the day, just choose a basic moisturizer and that will get you exactly where you need to be. quality. You don't need to spend a lot of money on this kind of a thing. But of course, there are all sorts of expensive options with jazzy ingredients, but the basic thing you need is just a simple moisturizer. Again, this is another thing you can find at the Dollar Tree if you want to, or Walmart. You don't have to spend a lot of money on this. If your skin generally is oilier, I suggest choosing a gel moisturizer, or maybe even looking for something marketed as a hydrating serum. These tend to be significantly more lightweight. They're hydrating, but they don't feel heavy or oppressive on the skin surface. So there are some nuances and overall textural differences from different moisturizer to different moisturizer, but ultimately at the end of the day, don't overcomplicate it. Just find one that you like and stick with it. When should you moisturize? Well, after you rinse the skin of the cleanser, gently pat dry the face and then immediately apply moisturizer. That is the prime time to put it on because it really helps to address the needs of the skin barrier post-cleansing to maximally reduce transepidermal water loss. This whole skincare routine that we're talking about up until this point, for the most part, this is your nighttime skincare routine. Cleanse and then moisturize. Putting moisturizer on at night, it is kind of biohacking your skin physiology a bit because at night as we sleep, the skin is more inclined to lose more water, become more vulnerable to dryness, and to just looking dull and irritated the following morning. So that's really the best time to put it on. Now, the following morning, if you feel like your skin is a little dry, it feels a little squeaky, tight, then you might want to put a little bit more on. Again, if you're going to shave in the morning, I do suggest putting a moisturizer on post-shave rather than a traditional aftershave. And as a side note, sunscreen is in a moisturizer base. So using sunscreen is using a moisturizer. Speaking of which, let's talk about the third component, arguably the most important, and that is sunscreen. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, traditionally men are a lot less likely to regularly use sunscreen in comparison to women, and historically men were more often the ones outdoors in outdoor occupations and therefore got a lot of sun exposure unprotected, and that's why nowadays we see such higher rates of skin cancers in older men compared to older women, although we see a lot of skin cancer. I digress. A simple daily sunscreen habit is arguably single-handedly the most effective anti-aging skincare product that you can use. It's the most research-backed. The majority of premature skin aging is the result of unprotected sun exposure. This is the number one thing that you can be doing to protect your skin, to keep it healthy, also to cut down on your risk of skin problems later on in life. And again, it's a moisturizer, so you get a 2-for-1 there in addressing the skin barrier as well. When it comes to choosing a sunscreen, lots of options here. For men, I typically suggest either a gel or a gel cream formulation. Why? Well, these tend to go into hair-bearing areas like the beard, the mustache, a lot easier. Whereas certain sunscreens, especially those that are mineral, tend to leave a chalky white residue on the hair, kind of clump up in the hair, just not aesthetically pleasing. Gels, on the other hand, blend right into hair-bearing areas. Now, there's a lot of misinformation online these days with regards to the ingredients in chemical sunscreens. This is all BS. Chemical sunscreen ingredients are more than safe. There's no evidence that they cause any sort of hormonal disruption in humans in real-world use conditions, okay? Because remember, we're not cells in a dish. We're not lab animals being pumped with pounds and pounds and pounds of unimaginable amounts into our esophagus, okay? We're just putting it on the skin. No adverse health effects using chemical sunscreens. If you swear off chemical sunscreens, well, then you're left with mineral sunscreens. Mineral sunscreens leave that chalky white cast. They are a lot less friendly, if you will, for efficient application. They take more time and they almost always feel more oppressive. They feel heavier on the skin. And therefore, one of two things will happen. The first is that you will use less sunscreen. You'll apply a smaller amount because it's just uncomfortable to apply the correct amount. The second thing that happens in most cases is that you just stop using sunscreen altogether. You rarely ever use it, in which case it's pretty much useless. That's why I highly suggest considering a chemical sunscreen. These tend to dry down much quicker. They're not as heavy. They're not as greasy. They allow for good evaporation of sweat off of the skin's surface so you don't feel overheated. They don't feel like quite the oppressive film of a mineral sunscreen. They don't leave a cast and they look a lot better. So when it comes to sunscreen, aim for SPF 30 or higher. If you're going to be spending a prolonged period of time outdoors, you want to make sure you're reapplying as well, ideally every 2 hours while you're outside. If you're going to be participating in sport, activities, water-based activities, or your occupation is outside, you work like construction, for example, choose a water-resistant formula because they tend to hold up a little bit better with sweat. The last thing you want is for your sunscreen to go running into your eyes when you're sweating. That is no fun. And of course, they're not a shield of armor, so I do encourage other sun protective behaviors like the use of hats, long sleeves, sunglasses, seeking shade. Like I said, sunscreen is the one step in your skincare routine that makes the biggest difference long term. All right, let's talk about shaving. First of all, never just go in to a dry face shaving. You always want to make sure that you get the skin and the hair specifically good and wet. It is a lot easier to cut. You will have a more efficient shave and it cuts down on the risk of ingrown hairs, irritation, razor burn. Then after you get the face good and wet, apply a hydrating shave cream, shave oil, some sort of shaving product, okay? This lubricates the skin surface, allows for good glide, and again, it makes the hairs easier to cut. Now, I find a lot of the shaving tips that we give to men to be a little annoying and unrealistic, but ideally you want to take short strokes in the direction of hair growth. I realize that in the neck area, that is very difficult. Another tip to reduce irritation and ingrown hairs, although it's not always easy to execute, don't stretch the skin when you shave because that increases the likelihood that the hair will pierce the neighboring skin and start growing downward and you'll get an ingrown hair. Don't press very hard. You don't need to take out your aggression on your skin barrier with a razor. It is a form of mechanical exfoliation and that does increase razor burn. Make sure that you use a sharp razor blade. Don't store your razor in the shower. It dulls significantly faster in there. Consider switching to a single blade. If you get a lot of shave irritation, they are much less irritating in comparison to multi-blades, although of course they are a little bit more laborious to shave with, but I would suggest that if you are someone who gets a lot of shave irritation and ingrown hairs, it allows for a gentler shave. Also, if you struggle with ingrown hairs, consider using products that have the ingredients salicylic acid because this can help to exfoliate the surface of the skin, gently reducing the formation of ingrown hairs. Also will help with pore clogging as well. You could use a salicylic acid cleanser before shaving. That's a reasonable way to use the ingredient, or alternatively, you could use a leave-on salicylic acid product that you would apply after shaving or in between shaves. Leave-on products tend to be a little more fast-acting, but can be a bit more drying and irritating. So that's kind of an individual choice and what works for you. If you have an inflamed, ingrown hair, especially if you see a little white pus bump, get yourself a 2.5% benzoyl peroxide acne spot treatment. There are many options available out there. This active ingredient, benzoyl peroxide, it helps to unclog that pore. It helps to calm down inflammation. It targets bacteria in the skin and is very effective for this. A word of caution, however, it will bleach fabric. So make sure you put it on after you have gotten dressed because if you pull your shirt on over and that smears on your collar, it will bleach it and that is very annoying. And a reminder, daily moisturizing, it helps to keep the outermost layer hydrated and ultimately cuts down not only on ingrown hair formation, but on post-shave irritation, razor burn. Now I want to talk to you about seborrhea, which is the medical term for excessive oil production. Like I said, men have larger oil glands. They produce a lot more sebum throughout their lifetime. The androgen hormones drive that sebum production. What that can lend itself to is the formation of these flaky, red, irritated patches in the brow area, on the forehead, around the nose, in the beard area. If you have deeply pigmented skin, that inflammation from that condition, which is known as seborrheic dermatitis, will actually take away temporarily some of your skin color, bleach it out a bit. That's temporary, but it's not something anybody desires. This is known again as seborrheic dermatitis. It's the same thing that happens in the scalp called dandruff. They're the same condition, just kind of look a little different based on location. And the root cause is excessive sebum left on the skin, creates a favorable environment for overgrowth of Malassezia yeast, which naturally lives on everyone's skin, but too much of it is inflammatory and creates this abnormal condition where you get flakes, redness, inflammation, and you get dandruff. As a side note, seborrhea, seborrheic dermatitis, dandruff, the inflammation from the Malassezia also play a contributory role in driving the processes that lead to hair follicle miniaturization, androgenetic alopecia. So if you have these issues, don't sleep on an anti-dandruff shampoo. Look for anti-dandruff shampoos that contain one of the following ingredients: ketoconazole ketoconazole, which is found in Nizoral shampoo. This is an antifungal that helps reduce the amount of that malassezia on the skin. Or look for zinc pyrithione. It's anti-inflammatory and it also helps cut down on this yeast. Look for selenium sulfide, likewise an anti-inflammatory, anti-yeast, active anti-dandruff ingredient. And lastly, salicylic acid, either in a shampoo or a face wash. They make both options. Salicylic acid will exfoliate away some of those flakes and it is anti-inflammatory. You can use these medicated shampoos, of course, to cleanse your scalp, to cut down on the burden of malassezia, which ultimately just cleansing your scalp a couple of times a week with one of these shampoos cuts down on the amount of malassezia on your head, and that ultimately has a trickle-down effect on the burden of malassezia on your face as well. But you can use these shampoos, ideally in the shower because you're in there washing your scalp already, to lather into the beard area, the brow area, on the face, areas of the face specifically where you have a lot of flare-ups of this condition. These shampoos can be used there to help cut down and control that issue. It's called seborrheic dermatitis. If you really struggle with it, see a board-certified dermatologist. There are prescription topicals that can really help shut it up, but it is a chronic condition. Check out some of my videos here on seborrheic dermatitis because I give a lot more tips there. Now I want to talk about another condition that men may be affected by, and their skincare routine can, pose some challenges if you have this condition, and that is rosacea. Rosacea is essentially a chronic inflammatory skin condition where you have a heightened sensitivity to things that come in contact with the skin. You get flushing, you get blushing, and you get the formation of what looks like acne, but they're no actual blackheads or whiteheads, just these little pus bumps, little red bumps on the skin that can appear. Over time, you get the formation of prominent dilated telangiectasias. Again, men at baseline have larger blood vessels coursing through the skin, so this becomes an even more prominent issue if you struggle with rosacea and contributes to symptoms of burning and stinging when you apply things to your face. Triggers for rosacea flare-ups include the fireball in the sky, ultraviolet radiation, alcoholic beverage consumption without a doubt, also eating spicy foods, not just spicy hot, that is a trigger, but spices, especially cinnamon and nutmeg. So extreme temperatures, and of course, what does stress not cause? Well, rosacea flare-ups, it certainly can contribute. Like I pointed out, rosacea makes the skin more sensitive to skincare products, so you might want to be really careful with exfoliating acids like salicylic acid, glycolic acid, lactic acid, mandelic acid, and you also want to be a little bit more conservative, slow to introduce, if you will, topical forms of active vitamin A like cosmetic retinol, cosmetic retinaldehyde, or a topical retinoid. It's not to say these things are off the table, but you do have to be a little bit gentler with yourself when introducing them because the condition can flare. If you suspect rosacea, stick with gentle, fragrance-free skincare products. Fragrances in skincare can also be a trigger for flushing. Make sure you prioritize daily sunscreen use. While I railed against mineral sunscreens, sometimes the chemical ones are more likely to sting people with rosacea, so you might want to, in that case, choose a mineral sunscreen, or at the very least a hybrid sunscreen which has zinc but also has some chemical filters that are less likely to sting. So you might try that, less casty than an all zinc sunscreen. When it comes to choosing moisturizers, you could choose a moisturizer that has niacinamide or licorice root. These can help calm down redness. And of course, when it comes to rosacea, it is a medical condition, so see a board certified dermatologist. There are a variety of prescription treatments, laser-based therapies that address the symptoms and help control the condition and reduce persistent stubborn redness and dilated telangiectasias. Let's get into some optional add-ons for your skincare routine, kind of in the realm of anti-aging, if you will. If you want to go beyond the basics, you might entertain the idea of introducing a topical form of vitamin A, whether it be in a cosmetic such as a retinol or retinaldehyde, or whether it be an actual medication, a retinoid. Retinol or retinaldehyde, commonly found in wrinkle creams that you can buy in the drugstore. You don't have to spend a lot of money on these because some of the brands in the drugstore, like Neutrogena, who I am affiliated with as a side note, they have a long-standing track record of intensive R&D behind these formulas, so they tend to be a lot more reliable in comparison to just some random brand that popped up. You can have a little bit more confidence. They've been, as a brand, working on retinol for a long time. Also, skincare brands under the umbrella of L'Oreal are usually pretty reliable. The other alternative, though, is adapalene, brand name Differin gel, but they have a generic version. This is actually a drug to treat acne, but it has evidence for an anti-aging benefit as far as improving collagen, the visible signs of skin aging, and so you might just want to go with that. Tolerated. Check out some of my videos here on how to introduce retinol because there are a few tips and tricks and strategies. It can be very irritating in the beginning, so you might want to check those videos out. They're all in a playlist called Retinol Q&A. What about vitamin C? The million-dollar question. It is like the most popular skincare ingredient, the most highly sought after. If you're new here, I find vitamin C to be a bit overhyped. Yes, ascorbic acid does have some evidence that it can improve collagen, can improve the visible signs of sun damage, but it has formulation challenges and then it's not the most stable ingredient and penetration into the skin is limited. So a good formula makes or breaks whether or not it's going to do anything. Now you have offshoots of ascorbic acid derivatives, which the brands will claim are gentler and do the same thing, but I think they're mostly just sitting on the surface of the skin and maybe offering some modest antioxidant defense. Then there's niacinamide, which I tend to be partial to because there is some good evidence for it. It's stable, it gets into the skin, it's anti-inflammatory, it's good for redness, it's good for dark spots, and it's good for the moisture barrier. So that's another one you might want to entertain, and you don't have to go out on a limb to introduce that either. It's often in moisturizers already. It's in many sunscreens, so boom, there you go. You don't have to add anything extra. Regardless of if you choose vitamin C or niacinamide, they're antioxidants. They can help defend against environmental aggressors, potentially cutting down on premature skin aging. That is the hope. Let's recap. What exactly is the basic skincare routine for a man? Cleanser, moisturizer, sunscreen. Wait a minute, you mean the same basic skincare routine you recommend to everybody else? Yep. Why yap about all these skin differences? Well, to educate you on how men's skin is different, has some unique needs, but ultimately at the end of the day, a basic simple skincare routine of cleanser, moisturizer, sunscreen is really all anyone needs. You don't have to spend a lot of money on this stuff for it to help you out in the long run. I really hope this video was helpful and informative to you guys. Let me know in the comments if you are a male viewer out there, what sort of skin concerns do you want to hear more about on this channel specific for men. I am happy to do more videos because there are a lot more of you here, although I suspect a lot of you are here from the YouTube shorts, which means you probably aren't even watching this video. Anyway, if you like this one, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and as always, don't forget, sunscreen and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye!